Welcome, everyone. This is Byron White. Happy to be here with everyone. Welcome to the 23rd Content Marketing Webinar. Wow, I think I'm getting old. Chris, welcome. Are you here?
I am. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Indeed, thanks for joining us as well, Chris. We're very excited to learn more about your world over at iPressRoom, some fabulous new technology that's been launched to the world, and really excited to hear about your presentation today, reaching a global audience to drive influence, reputation, and gajillions of dollars of revenue. Well, actually, I just made that up, but we'll try to get to that as one of the outcomes.
That sounds great. Exactly.
So without further ado, I think I'm going to dive in and walk through our presentation. I'll give everybody a quick ground rules here on the presentation itself and how it works. But the net of it is everybody that joined in can get a free copy of my 101 Content Marketing Tips book, so that's the good news. We'll shoot that out to you in the end. Number two, we love questions. Chris and I both will be fielding questions in the end of the presentation today. If you could, please list your questions as you think of them in the chat area of the actual tool that you're listening to this on, and we'll flush through any of the questions and dive in and answer them in the end. So without further ado, let me give you a quick lay of the land. I'm going to go through about a 10 or a 15-minute presentation here that I blow through very quickly, leaving plenty of time for Chris to dive in with his presentation. The first part of what we do annually every month is to go through just a quick review of the Content Marketing Revolution, which we'll do. I then prepared 10 sensational press release writing and strategy tips that I think will be extraordinarily helpful for you in trying to get the attention of your customers as well as any target audience, including, of course, the press. And then finally, we'll look at some ways to measure that, which you'll find interesting as well as part of my presentation. So a quick take on the Content Marketing Revolution. What is it, and why is it gaining such momentum? It's essentially defined as the art of listening to your customers' wants and needs, as you can read from this slide. And this is probably the trickiest part of the actual process for content marketing. How do you listen to your customers' needs? And we're seeing some very new technology being developed. I just heard a pitch last week on some new technology related to press release distribution and optimizing press releases, which I think will become public sooner rather than later. And I saw a demonstration of that and played with that over the weekend, actually. Very exciting stuff that I can disclose in the future. But of course, we can look at our search box to see what people are looking for on our website. We can look at our analytics to see what our most popular pages are. We can look at keyword popularity. We can talk to our customer service representatives to learn more about what our customers are really saying and wanting and needing. And that is the critical element to really anything you're doing related to content on the web and anything you're talking about investing in or publishing. It's also the science of delivering content to them and their wants and needs in a compelling way. And that portfolio has very simply widened tremendously in the last 6 months to a year. It's no longer blog posts or tweets or Facebook posts. You need to be starting to think much deeper about your content and your reach and catching customers orbiting at high speeds. It's, of course, constantly testing campaigns to learn what works and doesn't work with A/B testing and multivariate testing. And there's all kinds of new twists coming into play with geo-targeting and segmentation and very complex tests that are really getting exciting to see how it all pans out. It's, of course, measuring customers' engagement as well. We can do that by tracking the type of assets they're downloading, how much time they're spending on page, and some other metrics that I'll get into. And it's, of course, trying to catch readers with innovative tools and anytime content, I like calling it, and other people tend to use that word as well. And we're using applets and desktop, of course, and mobiles and all kinds of other ways to get the words out and the links and the traffic in. And finally, it's developing a pipeline to educate and earn trust and drive sales. And that pipeline we're seeing integrated into Salesforce.com and scoring of leads and all kinds of interesting things that are helping us to pinpoint who is an appropriate person to talk to about your products and services. So it's changing, and it's changing fast, and scoring content, I think, is going to be the driver for trying to weed through who's hot and who's not, and there's all kinds of interesting ways that that's being done. Let me walk you next through this sort of 10 steps for press release success. This has been developed with a number of different people over a great period of time, back when I even started my first company called Freelance Access, which was a graphic arts placement agency that grew very quickly for a whole bunch of reasons, some of which we'll get into here. So the first tip is to just really get very creative with what you're going to write a press release about. And these are just I think, some really interesting things for you to jot down or take a look at. And this deck, by the way, will be available on ideaLaunch.com for you to download probably by Thursday of this week. So you can just go there and download this on ideaLaunch and get a copy of all of this. But I think that that really the secret to press release success and to assembling a number of different stories, I would like to call them, is thinking very creatively about what you can write about. And I've bolded some things that have really worked well for me, promoting this webinar. I'm going to show you a live example of that later in this deck, where we actually optimized a press release that I did about a year ago for a strange phrase called press release magic. And you'll see that we're now number 4 at Google for that phrase, as a result of just sending a simple press release out promoting a webinar. Talking about speaking engagements, I spoke 28 times last year, which gave me an excuse and an opportunity to promote a lot of those actual speaking engagements in a press release form to show that I'm a thought leader and somebody that's active and is an authority in the space. Green initiatives, you can look at some of the conversion metrics and data on going green for your own company and how that invigorates and empowers not only your employees but even your customers to want to buy more from you and support your efforts and your initiatives. Finding remarkable employees, within your company and taking their story out or supporting their story. Maybe some of them are involved in charities or other things they're spending their valuable time doing. It's worth finding those employees, helping them gather ideas and develop stories to help make your company better. Remarkable company policy is another great one. I remember HubSpot recently in their rise to incredible success. Their CEO, Brian Halligan, decided to just in one swoop let employees, hypothetically take as much vacation as they wanted to, as long as they were doing their job and hitting their numbers and doing the things that matter to grow the business. These are truly remarkable policies that need to be talked about and celebrated and disclosed to try to get attention and distinguish you from the competition. So lots of ideas on this page, and worthy of really thinking through and finding a way to get good information out to prospect customers for the sake of the information, not so much the sake of growing like popularity. Speaking of research and competition, there are so many great tools out there for you to consider using. We have some tools, but researching the competition is something that we do ourselves. We're always monitoring the competition. ideaLaunch competes with Junta 42 for many different keyword phrases, marketing profs. How are we doing versus themselves versus the competition? We're constantly doing that research, and that research is helping us to identify opportunities for us to focus on for SEO strategy as well as press release strategy. I mentioned finding customers' wants and needs. I think you need to go way beyond just talking to your customer service reps. I think surveys and phone calls and monitoring their behavior in the social media sphere, looking at your analytics account. You've got to dig very deep these days to help understand what the wants and needs of your customers are, which of course should be what you're writing press releases about. Participation in events people are talking about, following events people are talking about, participating in the conversations for those events or those activities or those hot products, whatever they are. It's all about listening to those wants and needs. That's really where the stories are coming from. I mentioned finding the stories within your employees, but dig deep here. Are your employees winning awards? One of our CTO won a Microsoft award a couple of years ago. I mean, that's a big deal for a company like ours, for a small business like ours to have a CTO that has won a major award. Are you submitting your website or your stories to certifications and award programs? Do you have industry recognized leaders that are part of your company? Have you received any recognition, even your individual employees? This is all the kind of stuff that is you need to dig very deep on and reward your employees with going public with a press release for that story. The keyword research tools, there are lots of them. There are some that I've listed here. There are many, many more, but I would encourage you to play with any and all of these to try to find out the hot keywords that you need to use to optimize press releases. Optimizing images is another big part of the press release game. Even taking customized stock images and customizing them. So here's an example where we took a stock image with this person holding up a ball, but we put content marketing on it, which we now use on a lot of our decks. Can you customize images, in stock images, to make them your own? I think it's an innovative idea. And of course, optimizing them for the bots is important as well, and naming those images. Even taking, creative captions or headlines and pulling them out of the body of the copy. Hyperlinking the text within the press release is critical, but not overlinking. Optimizing the image and names. I mean, all this is a critical part of the process. So, trying to centralize the publishing, to maximize the results is also critical here. And these plans that we develop are critical to that. So what we're trying to do here is create both an SEO plan and a content plan that helps you really get a holistic view of what you're going to publish, an editorial calendar, looking at the personas of who you're writing for, looking at all of the keyword analysis that needs to go on, looking at the entire year layout for all the releases that you're going to optimize for, and then the content plan. What is the overall short tail and long-term plan? There's actually a whole other bunch of, I have my old deck here, but the content plan gets more into the actual style of the content and the personas that are created, and all kinds of different aspects of how much content you need to create, which silos do you need to create the content in, and all kinds of other variables you need to look at. You need several plans to help you have an effective press release strategy. Certainly looking over the press release calendar is key, in looking over a steady stream of press releases to distribute, looking at your upcoming shows and staying ahead of the game with regards to speaking events and any employee news, and looking at that steady stream of pipeline. It seems that press releases often are generated out of, oh, we have something coming up. Maybe that's worthy of a press release, when in fact you should be way ahead of the game and thinking way beyond the scope of particular events, and starting to drum up and create events throughout the course of each month that are worthy of taking to that market. And optimizing the search release is certainly key. Press Release Grader by HubSpot is a great tool. WordVision is a tool, a proprietary tool that we use. You can also go to PageStrengthTool.com and SEO Content Grader, which are both available on ideaLaunch, that help you score and grade particular pages on your website and/or content, so you can get a feel for how well it's optimized for particular keyword phrases that you enter. And let's get to the tracking performance. So overall, there's a lot of different ways to track performance. The key with tracking performance, however, is being sure you tag the date that any press release or content asset that you're publishing on your website and/or distributing it out to a wide variety pool of a wide pool is tagging that specific date is the key factor here for driving and measuring and tracking performance. Let me show you a couple ways that we can track performance if you're effectively tagging the date that something published or was distributed. So on the left bar chart here, we see a whole bunch of different content assets we published, of which there were some press releases that were published during this track. And on the right, you can see that we've improved listing positions at Google for dozens and dozens of hundreds of keyword phrases. So we're tracking improved listing positions correlated with the publishing of content assets. Another way to look at it is to look at, again, correlation of content assets you've published or distributed and looking at increased traffic. These two charts that you're looking at here, as well as the two on the previous slide, were from Word Vision technology, this proprietary technology that we run for our customers here that tries to track that impact and measure that on an ongoing monthly basis. You can also look at repeat visitation and engagement on your website as another metric for tracking ROI. You can look at time on site and whether a press release might have had a certain variable of stickiness to it, which you can track and measure. You can look at lead generation that may have come from press releases that you published on your website with links that link over to those downloadable pages, or in the right column of a press release you might have a download our free guide or whatever the case may be, a call to action. You can actually start looking at how press releases and traffic to those releases is generating leads. You can look at overall improved conversion rates from any traffic you're driving from those press releases you're publishing on your website to isolate that traffic. You can look at increases in sales from any of the leads that came in getting as granular. This happens to be in Salesforce that allows you to actually go in and see what conversions happen from leads that might have generated through press release. So here's a case study where we wrote a press release on a webinar we were having and sent the press release out through PR Web, and we optimized the press release for a keyword phrase, press release magic, and within about 3 weeks of launching that press release, we were in the top 10 at Google. We're now in the top 4 at Google for that particular phrase. Not that there's a lot of traffic on that phrase, but this was accomplished by simply putting up a page on our website that featured that particular promotion for the webinar, running and distributing a press release out through PR Web that linked over to that page. So that one single link and the actual landing page on our website enabled us to achieve a top 10 listing at Google. So without further ado, let me turn things over to Chris. And I'll change the presenter here for you, Chris, and onward you go.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Byron. That was terrific. And I just want to confirm everybody can see my presentation.
All set.
Do you see? All right.
Yep.
Well, perfect. So I'm going to talk about, of course, what I think most people are looking to achieve, of course, which is, reaching a global audience, or at least reaching your audience. Sometimes they might be hyper-local, sometimes they're regional. In many cases, it is global, to drive influence. Manage your reputation and really to deliver outcomes. And my focus is really about the website today is what I'm going to be talking about. iPressRoom, to give a little background, is web content management software. Primarily, clients including Yahoo, Xerox, Epson, Target, UCLA, Central Michigan University. We have cities and municipalities such as the city of Carlsbad or the city of Calgary, counties. So across the spectrum from public to private and small to large, use our software platform to publish their press releases, photos, video to an online newsroom. So that's really what our central focus is. Clients also use our platform to deliver content to their website or to microsites, and that's really the business challenge. Is what Byron's talking about is content. So what we want to do at iPressRoom is make it easy for our clients to publish that content and distribute it and make it available. So what I'm going to talk about today is really sort of 10 reasons why we want to consider upgrading our current website capabilities, what we have connected to our corporate website. And typically these are sort of the goals, which is really about increased web visibility, brand awareness, managing our reputation, trying to facilitate traditional mainstream media coverage, as well as, of course, non-traditional, such as online, blogger and influencer relations. And these are the types of things that, back to what Byron was just talking about, this is what's going to drive our link value, is ultimately getting links from other online publications. So getting pickup from our news releases and an actual hyperlink for that keyword. So ideally, to even supercharge Byron's case study even further, if he could have gotten a high-level blogger with a good page rank on that blog with an actual hyperlink for press release magic, and that link inbound to the ideaLaunch website, that's going to get an even higher visibility in Google search. So that's the kind of thing we're trying to facilitate in a goal. Of course, sales and stock price increases. Your outcome or goals might be community involvement or support, event participation, whether it's digital or physical, offline event participation, word of mouth and referrals, and also to support crisis communications, whether that's corporate crisis reputation management or actual, crisis such as tornadoes, earthquakes, or that type of thing that we've been seeing lately. So my point of view is that your website is the center of your online world. And we talk about there's social media is prevalent everywhere and is extremely important. Everything is becoming social, and that really means that our website needs to talk with people, not necessarily to people. But our website and your website is really the center of your online world. I see other social networks such as Twitter or Facebook or other places as other neighborhoods. And these are other neighborhoods where people spend their time. But your website is really your home. And that's where ultimately we want all roads from those other neighborhoods to lead back to you. This is an example of what Xerox's home looks like. And one of the proof points of that is the Altimeter Group did a recent survey of the top social media strategists in the U.S. And the number one priority for those strategists in 2011 was increased integration with the corporate or organizational website with social media. And that means, and the reason for that is because the social integration with your website allows readers to stay on your site longer and encourages social sharing and community in a location, your website, that you have more control over. Because have we all seen, Facebook and Twitter, where they are fantastic channels, where there lots of people spend a lot of time, but we don't have control ultimately over the content or over what happens on those sites. So again, I see other social media sites and destinations as other neighborhoods. And further, I was on a panel recently with the professor at the USC Annenberg School of Journalism. Professor Jonathan Taplin leads the Innovation Lab at USC's Annenberg School of Journalism, and his viewpoint in a panel discussion that I participated with him recently at USC, his point of view was that social media sites, he calls a milieu. They're not necessarily networks, in that a milieu is a place, like I would say a neighborhood. But his point of view is that in a milieu, people can leave at any time. They can come and go as they choose. And what's going to keep them there is the quality of your content. So that's really what it kind of goes back to. So I'm going to go through here quickly. And again, feel free to think about questions. I'm going to leave enough time at the end to answer questions of any nature, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. But I'm going to kind of go through 10 reasons why I think we all need to be thinking about improving the capability on our organizational website. And that's both the technological capability to host content of all kinds, and it's also the capability to focus on content and content creation. So sort of reason number one why I think we need to focus on upgrading our capabilities is really about the shift. And that's the shift in media. And all of us know intuitively that we are now shifted our focus on where we're consuming media, where we are getting our information just as information consumers. But that also means that media, both traditional journalists as well as non-traditional journalists, are all working online. And many outlets, of course, are exclusively publishing online. And many journalists are now sourcing information exclusively online, via Twitter, via the corporate website, via PR professionals that they are connected to on Twitter or other means. This is the shift. And of course, we're now seeing more and more of a measurement, less by clips, less by the number of actual hard clips you get, mentions, and more by web traffic and sales. PR has it's easier now to measure the return on our investment now that things are online. And we're seeing more and more social media and search engines driving more eyeballs than traditional media. I lecture quarterly at UCLA, and occasionally I'll bring in a newspaper and show to the class that this is what an actual newspaper looks like for those of you that haven't seen one. And I think we can make the case that it's more valuable in many instances to be within the first 5 search results for one of our primary keywords than it is to be on the front page of the LA Times, for example, because that visibility in search is going to become far more valuable over time than a front page result on a mainstream newspaper might be. So reason number 2 is that content is king, and we've heard this phrase many, many times. But this, in regards to your website, is do you have the capabilities today for your website to be dynamic, for it to spread frequent, authentic, relevant, and engaging content? And at iPressRoom, we use this acronym, FAIR, F-A-R-E. And my sort of catchphrase is engage in fair content or pay the price. And fair, again, being frequent, authentic, relevant, and engaging. And what does that really mean? Well, again, thinking about the target audiences, you have many target audiences: mainstream media, non-traditional media, influencers, your customers, analysts, investors, partners, public policy makers. All of you, I'm sure, are fairly clear on who your audiences are. And then if you were to think about those audiences and segment them, and how are you going to be communicating to them, and what is appropriate in terms of frequency? In some cases and in some channels, our frequency might be once an hour. In some cases, it might be once a week, maybe once every other week. Authentic. We see authenticity being a critical component of our communications online, and we've seen numerous examples, all of us that consume news and information, about those organizations, those public officials, those companies that are not authentic. And when they're not authentic, the truth becomes revealed. And usually it doesn't go well for that organization. And when things do go wrong, as they do go wrong, these are opportunities to reveal ourselves to be authentic. A few years ago, JetBlue, the airline, had, I believe it was some sort of a tremendous baggage fiasco, and their stock price plummeted, and the CEO of the company got online and did a very authentic video that was very straightforward, wasn't slickly polished and produced, but he was genuine in his message and said, we made a mistake and here's what we're doing to fix it. And obviously they had to back it up by real action, but that authenticity really is why we see traditional advertising becoming less and less effective, because it's less authentic. So think about and ensure that you are authentic in your messages. And relevancy, of course. Everything in search is all about being relevant. So think about what is relevant to your key audiences and ensure that you're going to deliver the content that's going to meet the needs of information that they're looking for. And that goes back to the final piece, is engaging. What is engaging? And engaging can either be entertaining or informative or both. But that's really what we're trying to do in every piece of our communication, and that's sort of our recommendation, is frequent, authentic, relevant, and engaging content. And to be able to deliver that through your website. The third reason is, does your newsroom or your website? I mean, we see your newsroom as the central communications hub of your newsroom, but there may be other sections. In some cases, our clients have blogs that are associated with their newsroom, or the newsroom is aggregating blogs, or they have an additional blog in addition to their newsroom. But there are sections of your website that are usually around or connected to the newsroom that is the central communications hub of your organization online. And does it consider all of the various audiences, as I talked about a moment ago, journalists, consumers, investors that might visit your home? Or are you thinking about mainstream media only? I see many organizations at times that are just seemingly addressing mainstream media and not putting content up there that might address influencers or bloggers or others that might have a significant impact on the outcomes that you're trying to go for. Again, as I mentioned at the top of the presentation, if you could get a key blogger to mention, your content, product, event, campaign, program, community service, and provide a direct link to a specific page on your website, that's a significant win. Reason number 4 is about multimedia. Now all of us, have broadband, and it's absolutely expected today that you have more than just text, certainly images, and ideally audio and video. We certainly heard studies about how we don't necessarily read everything on the web. We scan, and we certainly watch video increasingly. So it's really a must to have video. And ideally, you have news releases that, in addition to the news releases, for example, our client UCLA, they have news releases that also have related video. So they are full multimedia press releases on their own website. And you don't have to be Xerox or UCLA to have that. You absolutely can have a news release with related video and multiple videos associated. So you're packaging up that story, and you're making it easy for people to share that content and consume it. So reason number 5 is, of course, social media. Now, there's multiple components of adding social media to your website capabilities, and that includes the ability for people that visit your site to share that content. Now, not in all cases are press releases great vehicles for sharing. It's certainly, if you take many of Byron's ideas and you create compelling news releases and you add multimedia to it and related links and related content, then you might have a news release that's worthwhile for people to share. But there's other content in your newsroom or your website, such as blog posts, articles, video, photos, infographics, other types of content that people might find valuable enough to share. And you want to make it easy. So your site needs to have the tools to make it easy for people to share that content right from your site. Also, we want to enable people to see what you are posting in social media. So if you're on Twitter or on Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or other sites, that we want to be able to enable visitors to your website to see that content and encourage them to connect with you in those sites. So there's multiple levels of integration with social media. And finally, we also want the ability, when you're publishing a news release or a video or a photo to your website, you need the ability at the same time to schedule publishing to various social media networks as appropriate. So if you're publishing a press release to your website, you also need to be able to, at the same time, push that to Twitter and to Facebook so that you have a central point for publishing and integrating and ultimately populating those neighborhoods with your content so people in those neighborhoods will share it and discuss it and bring people back to you. Reason number 6 is back to search engine optimization and SERPs, search engine results pages. And Byron presented his case study about improving the position in a search engine result for a specific keyword. So the question is does your website and does your website newsroom allow search engines to really easily find your site? I mean, in this day and age where we're 12 years into the commercial internet and Google is a word in the dictionary, we still find websites that Google cannot find, or that sites that have been built in such a way that search engines can't find it. So if you or your client, if you are encountering your website that the press release is as a PDF, it can't be found in Google, or if it's built in such a way that your site can't be found, that obviously needs to be addressed. And there's much more that can be done, as Byron suggested. Once the basics of ensuring that your site can be easily found and that's structured in such a way, we ultimately, of course, want to also be able to analyze the content in those pages to ensure that the relevancy for our content is very, very high. Reason number 7 is the content and the design, is the presentation of the content modern, clean, simple, and utilizing best practices? Or is it difficult? Do people get lost? Because again, what our message is here today, of course, is to encourage everyone to increase the volume of quality content. That's really our message, and the more that you are increasing the volume of authentic, relevant, and engaging content and distributing that content across all of the available channels that people are using today, that is what is going to increase our effectiveness and our outcomes. But of course, once we have more content on our website, we now need the easy ability, because if we start to double, triple, and quadruple the amount of content we have on our website, but not have an effective, clean, and simple design, people are going to get lost in that content, and they're going to get frustrated. And studies show if journalists can't find what they're looking for, it might impact how they write about us or whether they write about us at all. So obviously, clean and simple design, one that can present a high volume of content in a way that's easy to find and then subscribe to that content, that's critical. Reason number 8, does our site enable you to refer traffic back to your main site? So the more we have a content hub that's putting out quality content into these other neighborhoods and driving links back to that content hub, does that content hub then have easy navigation, easy links, easy calls to action that can then clearly drive visitors back to other places on your main website that you want people to go? In many cases, clients of iPressRoom add to their website. They add our platform, they add on to their existing website, because certainly in many cases there are sections of their existing website that work just fine and don't need to be changed. They just need a more powerful content hub. And so therefore, typically what happens is, in the case of Xerox, for example, or Target, or Epson, we are taking over a section of their website, their newsroom primarily, or other sections of their site, even Yahoo, who can obviously build their own website, but they outsourced the news and the content hub section, the communication section of their website to us, because it was the fastest way to get a high quality, best practices capability. But now we're bringing traffic back, and now we want to then refer traffic back into other sections that are not hosted by the iPressRoom platform, other main sections that might be, in Target's case, the e-commerce section, so people can actually buy product. In Yahoo's case, maybe Yahoo Finance, Yahoo News, Yahoo Mail, other products that Yahoo wants customers to use. This is what we want you to be thinking about. Once you get people back to your newsroom, what's the action you want people to take? Of course, you want a journalist to take the action of writing a story, contacting PR to get a quote, but what other actions might be taken? And how can you take advantage of that traffic that you're bringing back to your website? Reason number 8 for upgrading your capabilities is privacy and security. We definitely have to strike a balance between being transparent, being fully available, publishing all of content, making everything publicly available, but also protecting your contact information. from unwanted guests. And this is an example. What iPressRoom does in all of our sites is that the media contacts need to be readily available, so that if you do get a journalist, a blogger that wants to contact you and get set up a time to interview your CEO or get additional information, you as a PR contact want your information available, but you don't want every spammer in the world to be able to get your email, or you don't want every spammer in the world to be able to sign up for your automated email alerts. So we protect all of those sign-up forms with a CAPTCHA code. That basically means you have to be a human, not a spam robot, in order to sign up. These are important things to consider. And do you have that capability today? Reason number 9 to improve is really about increasing the distribution channels. So we've all seen the importance, and there's so much buzz out there about social media, but how do you manage it all? And are all of those tools for managing and publishing to those channels, are they dispersed across all of these different tool sets that you have to use? Ideally, we see the importance of having one central dashboard to publish content to your website, to your blog, to YouTube, to Twitter, to Facebook, into RSS feeds, into email, and as well as to distribute directly to newswire services. iPressRoom's integrated with NASDAQ, the Associated Press. You can deliver photos directly into the AP. These are important components so that you can focus on creating content, not the business of trying to upload stuff to all of these different platforms and distribute it. So again, the goal is to make your relevant, authentic, and engaging content available in all of these different channels. And finally, of course, we need to measure it. So do you have the capability, and Byron showed some very good examples, to track visits, where they go within your site, what content are they consuming, sharing, commenting on, what are they engaging with? So how can you get more than just a very, very high level view of what's happening on your website? What outcomes are you able to achieve? What are you able to convert people to land on a page and then distribute? So this is sort of my reason number 10, and obviously we can talk, there's a lot of discussion out there about PR measurement, and measurement can go much beyond just simply monitoring and listening. There's a lot of ways to measure. I ultimately would measure based on outcomes, because that's really what we're going for. What outcomes are we looking to achieve with a specific announcement, campaign, or strategy? What are those outcomes? And put in place the ability to manage and measure to those outcomes. And then in addition to that, such as sign-ups for an event, participation at that event. We might also be looking for increased levels of engagement. That's ultimately also what I would look for, is sharing. People sharing, discussing, writing about, linking to our content. Those are the types of examples we want to really look for. So finally, in summary, to really deliver on these goals, my recommendation is to really make your website a place that people will be able to find, hear about, discuss, and share, and be seen as a trusted, engaging resource. And that will enable you to turn those visits into relationships and convert those relationships into outcomes. And those outcomes might be increased news coverage, increased online engagement, greater brand awareness, higher measures of favorable response, and ultimately revenue growth and sales. And those are the kinds of goals that I think in the combination of ideaLaunch and iPressRoom, and the combination of quality content and the ability to easily publish it and distribute it, is really going to help you to deliver. So that's the end of my presentation, and now I'll pass it back to Byron, and we can certainly moderate any questions that we have, and take it from there.
Great job, Chris. Really enjoyed the presentation very much. Lots of good ideas. I have several thousand questions for you based upon your presentation, so I'm going to dive into a couple, and then some other people can dive in as well if you have any questions. So, you know, you talked quite a bit about, you know, the functionality of iPressRoom and what your layout is all about. You dug into that a little bit. But do you have a sense with the customers using your product, you know, how are people really using press releases? Is it getting more and more creative? And what volume of press releases are you seeing people publish from your perspective to really get in the game, to be, you know, to be relevant, to be a player, to be a leader in the publishing space? Can you give us an insight with what kind of volumes you're seeing out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that, you know, we have a long way to go in a sense. I think there's a tremendous amount of opportunity that is not fully utilized in the sense of being more creative with press releases and having more content like multimedia and photos. I mean, we see some statistics that press releases with photos get twice as much the level of engagement as press releases. We are seeing, though, a definite increase in the volume of press releases, and we're definitely seeing an increase in the volume of press releases that are more creative. And I would say, for example, that, you know, many clients such as Target and Xerox, you know, they put out a lot of press releases, but not all of them go out on the wire. So these are examples of press releases that are put out and they're published on their newsroom. They're distributed via email, via Twitter, you know, on the web, but they're not necessarily using a national newswire for every single press release. I also see colleges, universities, and cities and municipalities putting out many, many more news releases because, again, you know, they have a local audience. They have, you know, especially universities. UCLA puts out a very high volume of news stories because of the amount of activity that's happening. And I think that tends to be the challenge for smaller organizations or, you know, B2B organizations, is they feel like, well, we don't have any hard news. But I think that, as you've suggested, there are many opportunities to create what traditionally has been called soft news, but that, as demonstrated by your case study, there is significant business value to be accomplished by looking for opportunities, any opportunity to put out content. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a news release. It could be a blog post, or it could be an article. It could be a hot topic. It could be content on your site that's not necessarily called a press release, but it's short-form content that might highlight, you know, an internal spotlight on a product expert within the organization, right? So I guess I would encourage everyone to look for those types, and those are the kinds of things we are seeing. So some of our clients might do audio podcasts or video podcasts or short blog posts, that type of thing that may not necessarily be a press release.
What is the next generation of press releases? And I ask that because, you know, we've been stuck in this sort of 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that's defined by press release and a date on it. You know, what's next, Chris? Are we going to see more, you know, mini newscasts, or, you know, as forward-thinking companies are starting to think more like publishers, are we going to see more creativity with a, quote, press release or even newsroom?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think many of us have heard the social media news release or the social media press release. And this is really just formatting of content, right? What makes a traditional press release a social media press release is the fact that a social media press release has the ability to share that content, as I talked about. But it also might have, in addition to the text, photos and images, infographics, a video embedded with it, right? Maybe a little Twitter pitch, so there's a short version. But that's really what makes a traditional press release a social media press release, is not much more. So I think that's sort of the next evolution. And I think, yeah, when you pinpointed, I mean, the idea that we are all publishers now, we're all content creators, and I think it's just really the style and the content in the release is really taking that press release so that it reads more like a traditional news article. And it's engaging enough that I'm going to get enough value out of that content that it has the quality of the same type of news article that you might read, at any other type of online publication.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's sort of the next evolution is twofold. One is probably threefold, I would say. One, going beyond just text, so ensuring that the news release, in addition to text, you have multimedia, images, infographics. Number two, the ability to share that content and distribute it into other social media channels. And number three, taking the press release content beyond just the mundane announcement and trying to really tell a story.
Let's talk about sharing. Sharing is probably the critical component, Chris, these days. The more your story gets out, the more it gets shared, the more value it frankly has.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the hot tips and tricks that you've seen with encouraging people, enticing them, if you will, to tell the story a different way?
Well, that's a good question. Yeah, it's absolutely a good question. And obviously it does start with the headline. And those of us that have been writing press releases for years know how important the headline is. But we now have to think about the headline being viewed in multiple different contexts and in different forms and formats. Certainly when we're pitching a journalist via email, the subject line of our email, may be a version of our news release headline. But we might need to change that headline to make it stand out in email. Similarly, when we put it out on Twitter, we might want to make sure our news release headline is compelling enough to get somebody to click through on that headline. Thirdly, we want to think about, as you've presented, keywords in that headline so that that there are relevant keywords that aren't overly competitive, meaning if I try to put out a press release about computers, I might have a hard time trying to rank in search engines for computers because it's such a very competitive term. But again, as you showed in a very specific example, press release magic, something that is very specific, I might have a better opportunity. So my recommendations is definitely to focus on the headline, focus on what people are going to get value out of consuming. So this is why you see a lot of things like 10 tips for, 3 reasons to, survey data. People want metrics. Those are the kinds of things that are shareable. 75%, and it goes back to also the basics of communications in terms of what are compelling stories. The unexpected, something that might go against the grain of common belief. I mean, it's all those ideas that we've all know intuitively, that we studied in journalism and in communications. What are kinds of content ideas that are compelling, that are maybe the unexpected. Those are the kinds of things. But again, we need to think about how to package up that idea into 140 characters for Twitter and a short headline. So I think those are kind of my recommendations, is to really think about how you can sum up your story and provide value in a very short headline, and ensure that once people click through on that headline, that link, that they're going to get something of value that they now, because it's really twofold. First, we need people to click through, and secondly, once people do click through, they need to consume something that they feel valuable, that they got something from. Either A, they learned from it, or B, they were entertained. And that's how they're going to be willing to share it.
Chris, you and I connected with the tremendous advancements that we've had with writer access in your company and where you're going and where we're going. Wouldn't you agree that the biggest bottleneck, the biggest pain point right now is content creation when it comes to finding the stories, developing the stories, creating a steady stream of high-quality content that you can feature in a press release and get out in the newsroom?
Absolutely. It's creating the business of actually creating that content and the logistics of trying to publish it and distribute it to all of these places.
Well, we are excited. I want people, just before we chime out to just hear a little bit from you about your actual technology platform, because it's just really cool and really amazing and being used by some pretty big companies. Can you describe it and how it would interact with an existing CMS or platform that a company is using? Maybe they have their own website. Can you explain how your technology platform works as an isolated animal?
Absolutely. And so essentially, iPressRoom is a very specialized content management, website content management platform that's been specialized for communication. So we have pre-built templates and layouts for all of the different types of communications in a full-featured newsroom. So we can basically deliver to the smallest of clients the ability to look like their own CNN.com, so that they can publish content in all of these forms and formats. And I think that's sort of there's three critical components of what we do that I think is different. One, we add on to an existing website and we brand it so that it's a seamless experience. So a visitor to that site doesn't feel like they're somewhere else. Secondly, we bring to bear all of the best practices to easily get up and running and easily manage content in all the forms and formats today, so that that communications hub, that newsroom, that blog channel, that multimedia portal, that podcast portal, whatever the end destination we're creating for a client is full-featured with all kinds of multimedia, and is easy to use. It's easy to upgrade, it's easy to update, and it's easy to then, and the third piece, then distribute that content. So that's the big other piece that we have that other content management platforms don't, is integrated distribution with wire services, with the Associated Press, with distributing to YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. So that those are sort of the three big components. And so what we do essentially is, for every client, we have a small, medium, and large package, essentially, and we match their existing branding, and we enable their website for them, and we become an extension of their team. We train them and so that they have full control over their content, but they also have really high-level customer support. So that's what our clients need. They need the ability to control all of that content, distribute that content in all of these channels, and they need support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at a moment's notice if they need to get something online.
Chris, you just have a great product. I'm really excited to partner with you when we get our distribution feeds over from Writer Access right over to iPressRoom. It's going to be really cool, really exciting. So we'll look forward to advancing that. Question for you: Who do you want to get a hold of you? For this recorded, and how can they get a hold of you if they're interested in your product and/or more information about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
People can follow me, certainly connect with me on Twitter, and it's at Chris Bechtel, ChrisBechtel. You can also follow iPressRoom at iPressRoom. You can connect with us on Facebook, which is facebook.com/ipressroom.inc. Or the easiest way for everybody to get immediate information about the product or anything else, if they want to send email, it will go to me, as well as other key individuals here, is info@ipressroom.com. So if anyone wants to send direct email to us, ask a specific question about your specific needs, info@ipressroom.com, and we're here to be a resource. So we're here to practice what we preach, just like Byron's doing, and that's, share a whole lot of valuable content and provide insights and support and help everybody to be successful. So if we can answer any questions, even if that means you don't need to be an iPressRoom client right away, but you have some questions about what we've been talking about, or about some of the things that we've seen others do, we're happy to help, because we know that everybody is working within organizations, and sometimes they need help, talking to others and providing information to get internal buy-in for what they're trying to do. So we'd be happy to help everybody with that as well.
Well, listen, Chris, I really appreciate you tuning in today. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Byron, and thanks everybody for joining, and thanks for the time, and we really appreciate it.
Right on. Until
Thanks, Byron.
right on. Until next month, everybody. I hope you learned a lot. And next month, I know we're going to be running with the CEO of WordStream, so we'll look forward to another great webinar next month. See you next month, everybody. And if anybody is looking to get a free download of my book, you will get an email with a download to the PDF for all the attendees and anybody that registered as well. So thanks again for listening, everybody. We'll see you next month. Thanks. Bye-bye.